Welcome to the Responsible Marketing Podcast, conversations about marketing, sustainability, and how we can all help in becoming more responsible organisations. I'm Jo, a marketing strategist and consultant with a career spanning corporate, small medium business and self-employment, incorporating marketing and commercial skills in various guises, and now flying the flag for a more sustainable and kind future for all. In this episode, I'm chatting with Tony Underwood, who some may know from his rugby union career turned pilot, and now bridging the gap between communities and the private sector through a new enterprise, Believe Solutions, alongside business partner Liz Byrne, reinforcing the importance and benefits of fierce care. I can't deny the reason this came about is because I stayed at an expo to hear Tony speak, specifically because I was a total fan from when he played rugby for England, and I'm so glad I did. Believe Solutions is a fantastic organisation that is already bringing true and measurable positive impact and disrupting how we as businesses look at corporate social responsibility, social values and social impact going forward. We discuss how Tony's career and upbringing created an innate quality for caring, why it's important for organisations to foster a culture of care for their employees and in communities, the impact of true information transfer between the sectors, and how the bad stories are equally as important as the good, and of course Tony's new venture, Believe Solutions. Let's dive straight in. Hi everyone and welcome to the podcast. I'm delighted to have Tony Underwood with me this afternoon.
And Milo.
And yes, and sadly Milo's going to make a bit of a presence as well today. We can't get rid of him.
The real superstar.
How are you doing, Tony? Okay?
I'm fantastic, really. Very at home. I've got 2 dogs at home, so coming and meeting Milo's been wonderful.
Nice
Poor
and relaxing.
Hello, boy.
I know, bless him. It's the first time he's been on telly, I think.
Is it?
Well, on a podcast.
He's looking
anyway.
starstruck, actually. He's like, he's like TV
know.
shy.
Hopefully he might go to sleep, you never know.
Okay.
So Tony, you've had quite a career. Obviously there are people who recognise your name, recognise your face.
Thank you.
But for those who perhaps don't, would you like to give us a bit of a kind of like a quick tour of your careers to date and then what you've ended up doing now?
Okay. It's always that thing about what do you do and people not wanting to be referenced. I'd like to think about who I am.
Yeah.
But what people know me for is, having played some rugby. So I managed to play for England about 27 times, I think it was. And I've been on 2 British and Irish Lions tours. So from a rugby union perspective, male rugby union perspective, so played at a reasonable level. But I do, unfortunately, have to point out nowadays it was in the last century.
Oh, no.
It's that bad, yeah. In fact, because of the nature of that century, it's in the last millennium as well. So I'm old.
Quite a thing, isn't it?
So anyone who knows me, you're old. No, but thank you if you do.
Oh, thank you for that.
No, thanks, Jo. I went on to become a pilot, commercial pilot. Flew for EasyJet, then Virgin Atlantic, and more latterly ended up with Emirates, and flew the A380 around, which is that big double-decker thing, around the skies, around the globe. So fun jobs. Living around the place, ending up in France, and then more latterly in Dubai living. COVID brought that to an end.
Okay.
Brought quite a few careers to an end. I know we've all got our stories from it. Yeah. Mine was, being made redundant along with quite a few of us. When the email came, as we kind of knew it would do, to say, look, we'd like you back, that was when I made a bit of a life choice that I didn't want to go back.
Okay, interesting,
I was about ready, no disrespect, people love the area. I was ready to leave Dubai. So I wasn't maybe ready to leave flying, but anyway, that was the conscious decision I made, and I haven't regretted it since.
Good, yeah.
And the last 4 or 5 years have been, without getting too deep, kind of finding myself, really, kind of finding out, well, who am, to that point of who am I, a purpose, a sense of, there's no titles for really what I do, so I've made one up. I don't know whether I call myself the Chief Care Enforcer.
Yeah.
And the reason
title.
Okay, well,
I like it.
Some might find it naff, but I don't. What the heck? I don't really fit any other titles for what I do. Is because what I want to do is try and promote how much care can affect performance. Yeah, okay. And what I mean by that is we want to be in high-performing environments, or whatever you want to translate performing to be, a flourishing environment, being successful. But what people do is they immediately go there. They go immediately to being about challenge and about challenging ourselves to be better.
Hardcore, isn't it? Yeah.
Without buying themselves first the permission to go there with each other.
Okay.
And that's where care comes in. And I impress upon people the need to be fiercely caring, to buy yourself the right to be fiercely challenging.
Okay.
So I try and do that internally in organisations in terms of their leadership and what culture they develop. And more latterly with Liz, who I know you know, Liz Byrne, with Believe Solutions, is really how can we get organisations to externalise their care? How can they show it in a different way, in responsible practices,
responsible way,
in terms of business ethics and about how they do their CSR, how they do their social value, how they become a responsible citizen in communities and play that role better. A lot of them are doing them really, really well, but I come from a performance background, so hence the need to fiercely challenge them to do it better with a strategic solution to do it. But obviously what I want to do is bring fierce care to them first and understand what are their needs, and that's what we try and do, and try and adopt that approach with everything we do is about getting care into the environments and the sectors to then really challenge each other to do this better.
So is that kind of like caring nature, has that always been ingrained with you? Was it part of like when you were playing rugby? Because obviously I have to do the bit of fangirl thing, because I did used to watch you on the telly. I did watch you, I think, live a couple of times, a couple of games and stuff, but my dad used to go watch the games, all that kind of stuff. But but was that like ingrained with you? Because obviously there's a lot of camaraderie in the team, a lot of community kind of feel to playing in a team, especially at that kind of level, that professional level. So was that where that started, or do you think you've always had it in you? Is it a family thing? Is it a value you've always carried?
I think definitely started early. I got strong maternal or feminine influences on my life throughout my life, and anyone who knows my rugby career will know my mum, the real superstar in the family. It wasn't Rory or me, it was mum. Or Gary or Wendy, they're my other siblings, by the way, who are very big superstars in their own right. But anyway, mum was a massive influence in the life. I lost my father quite young. I was 13 when he passed away. But mum was the ever-present in our lives. We had an expat life growing up, so mum was the ever-present. And strong Asian background and strong Asian sort of
very family units.
Isn't it? Respect your elders, and a bit of a dragon mum. Not really. She wasn't really. What do they call those Asian dragon mums, aren't they? But she wasn't really one of those, but she was more sat on the sidelines, come on, darling, with a Mars bar in her hand after the game, which is not really what you want when you're an 18-year-old. But anyway, that's how she was. She fiercely cared for us and was a massive influence on my life about the need for that care at a very personal, engaging level in that way for my needs. And she was just there as a serving, it's what we do as parents, don't we? But serving our children, serving whoever we are in our lives. It was a caring role.
Nurturing them, and
nurturing role.
Trying to bring out the best in them, isn't it? Really, and give them the best to be able to nurture themselves as well.
And I benefited from it massively. And I guess with some people, they maybe you see it and you lived it and you experienced it, but I guess embraced it. And translated that to me into everything that I did. I met my wife Heidi when I was here at Barney young. So 16. So what I mean, strong.
That's really
feminine
strong
bonds and female bonds in my life, from very strong characters who shaped me and shaped me into understanding that the two biggest influences in my life were both female ones who were in a very nurturing way, and translated that into allowing me to do what I did in terms of rugby, and sacrificed everything for me to do that. So thankfully it didn't get lost on me. Maybe at times when I was younger, and I probably was a bit of a dick at times. Well, I know I was, but and then in the rugby environment, yes, of course, when you're playing a sport, any team sport, rugby in a very physical way, you've got to be there for each other, and you've got to care for each other in quite a strong way. That level of care, though, specifically for me, was really exemplified when I came to play at the Newcastle Falcons. I was at Leicester Tigers, and the game went professional. Got a chance to come back to the Northeast, which is my home. Grew up in Barney. Heidi from Darlington, she's a Darlow lass. So coming up to Newcastle was coming home, and a guy called Steve Black was a massive mentor for me. and a guy called Inga Twigamala as a player, a massive influence on me, those two, who exemplified care.
Okay.
And exemplified care and the environment they created for us there to create high performance, but by buying themselves the right permission to do it through the care they gave for us. So Blackie's way, and the same with Inga, is they didn't ask you how you were, they gave you a hug.
Okay.
They talked about love.
Right.
That's
in a
quite
rugby
different
then, isn't it? Actually?
It's very different.
And that's quite forward thinking, I guess.
Massively,
even though you've been playing for a few years or whatever, but even, back in the day, because that was still quite a few years ago, that was quite unusual, I think, wasn't it?
Massively
in such a
unusual,
kind of like highly testosterone male environment to offer those hugs as opposed to, like you say, you're all right kind of thing.
Yeah, and the nearest way, so it's not critiquing any other teams I was in.
No.
It was saying they understood the importance of us caring for each other and us being there for each other, for us to challenge each other to perform.
Yeah, okay.
That environment it took it to a fierce level of care is how I describe it. So I say we bought ourselves the right to fiercely challenge each other by fiercely caring for each other. And to me, that was the most optimal environment to getting the most out of that group that I saw.
And I guess it gives you a lot of trust as well between players or, between your team or whatever as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and it allows you to go there with certain things. That's exactly what I was going to say, is that sense of, when I say fiercely caring, it's not so much that I give you a hug. It's more, I ask you for a hug, figuratively, by saying, I made a mistake. I messed up there.
Hands up. Yeah.
I could have done better. You don't take yourself too seriously. You admit your vulnerabilities and you're not perfect, and you're okay about putting that out there, because I know that I've got a figurative hug coming back to say that's okay. We're all in this together.
Accepting that
we're all in this approach, and that again, that buys yourself that permission to go there in terms of challenging each other and ourselves as an individual to get there. So to me, it's intrinsically linked into everything, because I've seen how it can make a difference from going from high to elite. And I've been in elite teams where we haven't shown high level performance of team. It's good. It's good. It's excellent.
Yes. It's still right up there, isn't it?
But not elite. And really, to me, that's probably where the nuances of a weekly performance of teams, where that's where it fluctuates. It's not so much on their capability or their physical capability. It's how they come together on that day. And because of the nature of it, and being such a movable beast, our emotions, and you're playing with 23 of them, and the support staff and their friends and families all around, creating this ecosystem of how that organic team performs. It's always going to fluctuate, and sometimes it's going to be really synchronized. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit off, and just a little bit off at that level is what turns into a loss.
Down, maybe. Because I think I guess it makes you as individuals in that kind of like small community very intuitive as to how people, so you notice lots of small different, like you say, in emotion or mood, or how they're holding themselves or whatever. And I guess you're not advocate everyone at work goes around hugging each other. But
no, I know, yes.
Unless it's a very open.
Well, each to their own.
Yeah,
each to their own. What is your hug represented by? Because as I said, it doesn't have to be a physical hug. It's just, do I feel so much is virtual these days, isn't it? So I'm giving you a virtual hug.
Sending them out there.
Sending them out there, sending the love. But for those who do, it's there, but they know it's there.
And it's demonstrating that, isn't it?
It's exactly.
It's for people
point.
to understand that it's there, and that there's that channel, I suppose, channel of communication, both ways.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to the point when you show your vulnerability in that way, you're modelling the care, because you're modelling I suppose, modelling the behaviour of saying, look, it's okay for you to do it because here's me doing it to you.
Yeah, exactly right.
Okay, so I'm giving you the opportunity to ask for a hug because I'm saying, I want one myself, you know, sort of thing.
Yeah. So that kind of like leads you on to Believe Solutions, which you mentioned earlier. So you're a co-founder with Liz Byrne.
Yeah.
So we just say, hi, Liz.
The real superstar.
She is an absolute superstar, my word. She's quite a force to be reckoned with, isn't she?
She's brilliant.
So can you give us a quick overview of Believe Solutions and really what you and Liz wanted to kind of present within that organisation that you've now launched? Because you launched it, I guess, was it April last year?
Yeah,
April 2024,
yes,
so
indeed. So
not far off a year
it's
already.
bonkers, yeah. Where's that gone? It goes quickly when you're having fun. I think I can look back and say,
as long as you're having fun.
So we're having fun when
that's good.
And just but just to that point of just being so fulfilled with what we're doing, we're both really just so engaged with not just what we're doing, but what we know we can achieve when, as opposed to if we get this right. Because we know the system, society needs something different to what is out there at the moment. What I mean by what is out there, our communities are on its knees, some of them.
Okay.
In some ways we all are. We're not performing as well as we could, whether it's through the various challenges we've all gone through, but we're always facing challenges. And we're obviously, maybe some of them have reached this sort of, you've seen this word perma-crisis going around, because it's almost like a sweet spot of challenges and issues going on that have resulted in us facing some massive challenges around the place. So our communities are suffering as a result. And so what we're attempting to do is create a systemic change to what communities are kind of relying on. And what I mean by that is, so much of our thinking at the moment is that the public sector are supposed to be delivering change for a community. We whether it's going to the hospital, or the surgeries, GP surgeries, whether it's school, whether it's the council, local authority services being provided, etc. Everyone's going to them and expecting them to provide the solutions. And that's where the system's kind of taken things. Whereas what we're trying to do at Believe is like, no, let's change the narrative on this, and let's have a think about how we can all be stepping in.
Yeah, okay.
Because our role in community should be what can we do for ourselves to benefit? We're all part of the community.
But I think there's been a lot of breakdown in community, and whether that's kind of like through digital stuff or just to do how we live. You know, there was a report out over Christmas saying that it was the highest number of people alone at Christmas, but I can't think of the percentage now, I'd have to look it up, but there was a high percentage of people who chose to be on their own. Yeah. Which I was a bit like, wow, that's such a change, isn't it? So the community is, but we are innately, beings that want community. So it's a real paradox there, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think it's there. You just have to look at COVID, you have to look at the riots. When a community is challenged at its most, we step up. Yeah, you see it. I can lie. You want to come over?
Sorry.
It's there. It's you can see it bubbling up when it's called upon. And I guess what we're trying to do is, how can we intentionally bring that to the surface and find what's strong, not what's wrong. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Don't rely on when things are going wrong for it to turn up. How can we intentionally create the community coming together in a much more intentional way? Now, what I'm not doing, and not what we're trying to say is, yes, we can all do our part as individuals, but what I mean by a community stepping up is, who are the various parts of the community? And what, to me, I don't like to call them the volunteer or the third sector, but the community sector, and do all the amazing work they're doing, and the most crucial work. The volunteer sector are obviously trying to do whatever they can, but really on the sort of frontline services end. I'm talking about the private sector. And what I'm saying to that is, it ain't working effectively. I'm talking about fierce challenge. So I'm talking about high performance. At the moment, it's performing, but it's not nearly performing well enough. Not nearly performing as well as it could. So what Believe are there to do is to create a framework to allow a better functioning engagement from the private sector into the community. So it's not to tell them off either. No. It's not to tell them they're doing the wrong thing. No. It's telling them that the system is not allowing them, or giving the strategic approach to do the right thing.
Yeah, because it's kind of like, Yeah, I talk a lot about CSR with businesses as well. You know, that whole, you know, engage with the community, whether that's the internal community as well, by the way. So it doesn't,
Yep.
you know, has
Totally.
to start internally first,
Yep.
doesn't it? But then also, like you say, the external communities. Where are you going?
You can come over, it's fine. Come on, Miley.
So, yes, the dog's been very distracting now. So thinking about those communities and that engagement with them. And I think certainly from my experience, a lot of businesses quite rightly want to be engaged with communities and try and support them and help them whatever way they can. But it tends to be kind of almost like from a donor to recipient flux, as opposed to really finding out what communities want. And I know we've talked about this at great length before, you know, so it's a case of like, we've got these people free for 2 days a month, here you go kind of thing. Or we've got, I don't know, all this extra, I don't know, material or something, here you go, see what you can do with it. And actually that's not necessarily what the community needs. It's understanding actually what are the holes you need to plug in the community, and then how can corporate, I guess, fulfill that.
I think you like something I wrote. I'm trying to paint a metaphor for people.
Yeah.
And obviously with my past with rugby, I can do it with my aviation one as well, but I'll try the rugby one.
Yeah.
Is I look at the community as being the scrum.
Yeah, okay.
All right, I'm not going to try to get too technical. And all the charities, public sector efforts, etc., the various positions in that scrum. And because of the nature of that power dynamic and them scrambling and they don't have enough resources, they're all operating in silos. Yeah. Because they haven't got the ability to join up. And so the capacity to join up. So we've got a scrum that can't function. And I was a winger.
Okay.
The back, taking all the glory when I scored the tries.
Yep.
And that's the private sector at the moment, who are scoring some tries for their CSR and doing some great stuff, but we're losing the game.
Yeah, okay.
And we're losing the game. There we go, I've got Milo's.
Oh.
Milo feels the love.
To go sit with Tony
Milo's care, I know. Sorry, but
he's feeling it.
So what we're trying to do is change the dynamics. That's the exact point.
Okay.
For the backs are trying to tell the forwards how to scrummage, instead of, to your point, we need the forwards to tell us. Yeah. In the backs, how can we help you?
Yeah. Where's your support needed?
And to change that, as you said, dynamic, flip it completely, and say. And this is what I mean by I don't want to criticize the private sector. At present, the system is they are trying to do that, but the system can only give them a little snippet of what's needed, and they'll make their decisions based on that with really good intentions, but it's not the strategic outcomes we're looking for because there's no join up.
Yeah, okay.
So what we're trying to do at Believe is trying to create some join up in the community sector. Overlay everyone in a long-term sustainable outcome about if we're going to affect this community and lift this community, what are the interventions you're all doing? How can it all join up over a sustained period of time? Yeah. And then come up with a long-term solution where everyone's playing their part. And then we go with that package of a solution to the private sector and say, look, if you want to do some stuff, do it here.
This is what we need.
And also one of the things is it has to be place-based at a very local level, rather than spreading your love as a private sector across 50 schools doing a STEM project or whatever, or I might do some picking here and some volunteering there, let us direct you towards where the community, the forwards, have said, this is where we could do with your help.
Yeah, it's where we've got a big gap.
And then you can go and score your tries, because you will, but we'll be winning. There'll be better tries.
I'm going to say there'll be better tries, right? There'll be better stories, better communication, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, all the stuff we want to talk to you about is how can we then be generating the stories from the community to take your comms and PR to a whole different level. Yeah. Because it's the community talking about your organisation as opposed to the organisations talking about themselves.
Yeah, and what they're doing, which is good. Which again, we're not here to knock anybody who's doing some good stuff. Like good stories are good stories, and we love that. Yeah. But equally, you're right in the fact that if we could even make these stories even better and more impactful, and like you say, have the voice of the community saying, actually, this is what's made the difference to us. That again is amazing, like brand reputation work and PR stuff, which I know sounds a bit crass in some ways because you don't necessarily do it for the glory, but there's no harm in talking about that either. I think as as British people, we tend to be, or British businesses, we tend to be quite shy sometimes in talking about the good we're doing, or a bit fearful because someone might catch us out or say, well, actually, you did this, but actually didn't do this, or you didn't quite do it this way.
Well, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, because that's a different outlook in my mind. Is because we talk about greenwashing.
Yeah.
Social washing is going to be a thing.
Absolutely.
And
I think it already is.
And the community. I mean, that in terms of, as you say, internally, your staff, your customers, your shareholders, society are going to expect you to change from talking about your activity and taking these photos of activity to what outcomes, impact, what's changed,
and measurable impact.
And
I think
measurable
as well.
impact, and the reality is nothing's in the system to do that.
Yeah.
So again, that's
something you're working on, I think, isn't it?
We are indeed. So
we know.
Liz just keeps piling them on. No, that's what we're tackling, is to try and allow that to happen with a sense of how can we help the private sector to. Well, it's a crucial bit. Unless we have that happening, we can't be giving what the private sector need, and we fiercely care for every stakeholder here, and have to represent every single piece in that jigsaw. And the most important jigsaw to look at, well, is the community. But because the funding, the volunteering, the mentorship, the other kinds of support that the private sector can give in a proportional way to the size of the organisation can be done in a way that works for them as well. And that join up, and that's when we met. I think that was the first question you asked me, I think.
Yeah.
And we met at Wynyard, that not work event, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
How can you as a micro do your bit? Because you want to know. And that's what I mean by, if we've developed the solution over here, we would talk to you and we would talk to a Northumbria Water. Yes. It doesn't matter this, and just say, right,
it doesn't matter the
for
scale
who
of the
you
organisation, does it? Yeah.
You know, what can you do that's proportionate to who you are, and that's irrelevant. And we know we talk to you about your skill sets from the marketing point of view. How can you help a charity with their marketing, for example?
Exactly. I mean, it's, from that day when we talked, and one of the biggest barriers for me is as a small business, it would take me tens of thousands of pounds to throw out something to make a difference from a monetary, financial point of view. So that's a massive barrier for me. So what else can I do? So actually that was really, for me, really enlightening and comforting, the fact that actually there is a place for my type of business into making an impact from a social point of view, or social impact point of view, because otherwise I wouldn't have a clue, and so therefore I probably wouldn't do it. So I do some volunteering, and I support some charities and bits and pieces with free work, for example. But there's maybe something else I could do. So that actually, now having spoken to yourself and Liz, that's really opened my mind a little bit and thought, there is actually a way to do it. And it maybe is about skill sharing, or just, again, more extra support, or even just some, insights into something, whatever it might be, on some sort of kind of like forum panel, with charities or whatever. So I'm going to be interested to see how that pans out.
And I think I'd be interested to know some of your discussions, because I know you support, especially the TCL hub, don't you? Around the area.
TCL hub,
Because one of the things we want to shift, I know Network is massively pushing this as well, is that this power dynamic is an issue. And we need to stop it. So how can we get in a room, because a charity or a social enterprise or a CIC, whatever they are, they're a business.
They will have to be now.
And they need to be sustainable. And how can we drive that entrepreneurialism in them? But also what they can benefit businesses, especially the SMEs, in terms of their sort of transferable skill sets, that in terms of operating the way they do, they know better than anyone how to engage with people.
Absolutely.
They know better than anyone DEI policies, all that sort of stuff. How can we put ourselves in the same room and not be talking about third sector and the private sector, but just be talking about businesses?
Yes, A sector. All
sector
together.
All sector together.
Sector, the whole sector.
And share and innovate and actually sort of learn how we can all benefit from each other in so many different ways. And it's and just start that journey of changing that power dynamic, because you say it's common sense, but if you look out and look at our communities, and we know they're on its knees. So if we look at our community and you look at our society, who's playing that role for us as a population here, and it's that volunteer third sector, that community sector, and the public sector there, how can we help them? Because they are providing the most important role in our community right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the work that you mentioned, TCR, the hub, and they're based in Barney, and the work they do for the community is just incredible, actually.
Yeah.
So, and I also know from their point of view, and Rachel obviously was on the podcast at the back end of last year, you know, one of their biggest thing is collaboration. They can't do it as an isolated charity either. They have to use their network within Teesdale, Weardale, whatever it is, you know, and across the Northeast actually, to help with, you know, funding or, you know, skill shares or best practice or whatever it is. So absolutely, it has to be a collaborative approach, doesn't it now?
But
hasn't been.
But she'll say, I'm sure, Rachel, the same with all of them. I think their figure's 70% of the volunteer sector could be going under this year. Yeah. Because they're so snowed under. Yeah. They have to be tunnel vision with just the next month ahead. So they can't think strategically. Yeah, it's frightening, isn't it? Because there's no capacity there. So again, that's what we try and do, is provide that extra capacity. Yeah. And by bringing in the private sector, that's helping them to do that as well.
Yeah, so, okay. So you're almost like a bridge between them, but with that strategy type mindset to it. Yeah. So I know you're very humble about your kind of like reputation, but you do lots of like public speaking and things and events, and you do talk about high performance a lot through either rugby or you also use your flying career as that as well, don't you? So what led you to set this up? I mean, I'm not being funny, but you know, you have, like I say, you've got a reputation, you've got a persona. You could have just like latched onto something else maybe and just ridden their coattails. They could have ridden yours. It could have been a lot easier than setting something up from brand new and doing something that's, I don't know, hard work, you know?
Yeah, well, I suppose I went down that road after the flying, that started sort of trying to craft a bit of speaking. Yeah. And I could go around and make a living as a keynote speaker or maybe some coaching and training and learning development type stuff. Yeah. And I suppose that was where I was going till I met Liz. She said, no, you're not. You're coming with me on this. No, but
Liz again.
Liz again, yeah. She's Cumbrian in nature, by the way, and she got Cumbrian with me and said, right, come on, lad. No, actually, the journey started. I'm an ambassador up at the Newcastle Falcons, Newcastle Rugby Foundation, which represents the Falcons and the Thunder League team. Mm-hmm. So great privilege to, again, these titles. I'm not an ambassador, but you know, I at the time I should have called myself the Chief Care Enforcer for the Newcastle Rugby Foundation. But anyway, I didn't have that then. But
I can feel a title change coming on.
Yeah, I think I need to go and tell Mel that. Yeah, so it was really lovely for her to ask me. Really successful. You can see what role sport can play in communities, and again, obviously, with the work we're doing, it's a massive part of how we can be injecting and lifting what's strong, you know, in communities is how they can come together and be active, etc. But I think also a point when I was working with Mel at the foundation was I didn't want it just to be about sport and being active or the massive side benefits, but it was more about who we are as characters and people and things that we get in sport in terms of the environment it provides for us, what Blackie was doing for me, what I got at Barney when I was growing up here, and at the school, and essentially how can we try and bottle it up in terms of what's going on in an environment where we come together as a team in sport, and how can we provide some learnings for people, for kids, and take that out there and say, not so much you're coming to do some sport, you're coming to us to learn what happens in sport. Yeah, okay. And how can we teach these kids in terms of the internal as well as in journeys they've got to go through and help them with that, and then help them in their external part of the journey in terms of their relationships with others. Yeah. And I mean, best way to sum it up is emotional intelligence. How can you say, life skills and emotional intelligence. Life skills and character development, you know, and how can we help them with that? Because that's what's going on in a sport environment. Yeah. But we're learning it by osmosis when we're there. How can we, with intentionality, go out and teach it and say, this is what you've got to think about doing? And so that we can, and it's that pay it forward mentality that Liz and I would, because Blackie was, as you know, massive influence on her life as well as mine, was this is in our small way. Well, before I met Liz, this was my small way of paying forward what Blackie and the Ingers, Doddy and everyone else who passed away, unfortunately, 3 years ago, They provided for us there.
Yeah.
Doddy Weir, by the way, sorry.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was going to say a long story short, but it's already a long story. But but when we create, I was the idea, but I'm not the brains behind the development. A lovely guy called Chris Cook and a lovely lady called Lisa Morrison. I don't know if you've come across them.
Not yet.
Brilliant people in this space. If you want to know anything about that stuff, go and talk to them.
Yeah.
Wonderful subject matters if you want to talk to them on your podcast.
Okay.
Who helped to design the program. And then we went out. Then I went out with John Oates, who's a mentor of mine from Barney School.
Yeah. Okay.
And basically went to businesses talking about this wonderful program. We think you'd like it. How can you sponsor it so that we can take it into schools? And you might want some delivered into your apprentices and things like that.
Yep.
Okay. Wonderful reception all over the Northeast. And then all of a sudden I was sat in front of this chap and he was listening to us, and he then more or less physically got a checkbook out. He didn't, but like just said, here's a sizable check to back it and get behind it. And he mentioned these immortal words of social value I'd never heard anything about.
Okay.
Or I heard it, but I didn't really know what it meant. And then he talked about, at the moment it's just like a tick in the box for me, but this sounds like a really good thing to get behind where I can really make some impact.
Wow.
And I thought, well, that's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And walked away, and lovely, lovely guy went on to support it. But then it got me thinking, what does tick in the box, and what's for social value? What is this? And why is he only ticking the box? And why is this unusual to have something as a way to do something good? Surely there's lots of good things to do, not just my wonderful program, you know. So, and that's what started the journey for me into social value and exploring it and saying, well, actually, this present ecosystem about how, by the way, the main difference with social value, those who aren't quite sure about it, is if you talk about corporate social responsibility, that's where an organization are responsible because they want to do the right thing, or maybe they should.
Yeah,
they understand the need to do. Social values because they have to.
Okay.
It's in the world of public and private sector procurement, where if a public sector agency puts something out for tender to the private sector, in their bid, they need to show social value. What are they going to do and benefit this community? So you have to.
I think they have to evidence it as well, don't they? Or not yet? I don't know.
Better.
Okay.
Yeah. So
anyway,
yes, it needs to be evidenced. Yes, it needs to be evidenced. The argument to say at the moment, and this is only because of the early stage we are at in the thinking.
Yeah.
Or using the present ecosystem, which is procurement, the world of procurement, is to say, in procurement, what are you doing to benefit a community? So you're benefiting the community a lot by using a local supply chain. You're spending money locally. That's brilliant for the community.
Yeah.
So that's social value.
Yeah, okay.
You're taking an apprentice on.
Yeah.
That's local value. Obviously, this type of work I'm talking about is on a different level of social value, but procurement doesn't encompass this.
Yes, okay.
So the present ecosystem allows for social value to be demonstrated in that way. It will change.
Yeah, okay.
And businesses need to understand it will change. And they need to get ahead of it to understand that what are you doing? Because really, dare I say it, that's ticking it in the box because that's business as usual. If you're doing your business, not responsibly, but just efficiently, you're going to want to use someone locally because it's going to cost you less getting them here, etc. Those thinking, and so using a local supply chain makes business sense. What we're trying to say to them is how we can translate that into making local community sense as well, in with additionality.
Yeah.
How can you, yes, you like that word, don't you? How can we look at it from the perspective of not just business as usual, not just tick in the box, but how can we help you strategically think about making a real difference by additional practices, whether it's through your giving and funding, which is obviously a major part.
Which is a part, but it has to be a major part, doesn't it?
But it also can come from really proportional ways that your skill sets can benefit that community in the way that it's asking for it.
Yeah.
And that will create impact.
Yeah.
And then helping them to report that.
Yeah, and I think the reporting thing is really important. Again, it goes back to the whole communication, because it works both sides, doesn't it? Because you know then that the impacts or the activities your organisation from a private sector point of view is involved with is actually making a difference. So it's worth your effort being there and doing that.
Yeah.
So even from like a business efficiency point of view, it is worth actually investing in that. But equally, again, it's the good news stories, right? So you know, there's tons to go at for sure.
So, it's like positioning yourself. The way we talk about it, I mean, literally our literature, we just changed it a month ago, I think. The future belongs to organisations that care.
Yeah, okay.
And the reality is it will make business sense for you to get ahead of the game with this, because if you do, you're gonna stand out. Reputationally is a massive thing.
Yeah.
But if you're putting a tender in for something like that, and your tender includes a strategic impact report saying this is how you're going to benefit the local community, you're going to stand out a mile.
Put your streets ahead as well.
And so much, there's some procurement legislation that's coming out that's going to mean that the public sector are not looking for what they used to call economic advantage in their tender, but just most advantageous tender, with a lot more focus on social value and impact.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're doing that already, you're going to be ahead of the game and much more chance of winning those contracts yourself.
Yeah, it's being kind of like, I guess, that forward thinking then, isn't it? That's what's going to give you the competitive advantage, because we're all looking as organisations, we're all looking to kind of like beat the competition, and especially in tendering and things like that. So yeah, if you recognise the natural opportunity then to be slightly ahead in the game, then again, why wouldn't you capitalise on that and get yourself involved straight away? Yeah, definitely.
And I think to the link to your showing, you mentioned showing, but also the kind of work you specialise in, is that's the big difference, is you need to show impact.
Yeah.
And no one better to show impact than not you, yourself, but it's someone else talking about what a wonderful thing you're doing.
Absolutely, yeah.
So when the community are talking up about you, you know, then you know you're doing the right thing. But more importantly, everyone else knows you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, it's like anything, isn't it? Like a testimonial, which I know sometimes gets a bit of a bad rub now, testimonials, but because people think they make them up. But actually getting a testimonial on video speaks volumes, because then that person who's saying what they're saying, you know, unless you've got, I don't know, thumb screws on them or something, they're just going to say what they think, aren't they, really? So, you know, you obviously you pick the ones where you know you've done a good job and you're going to get a good response. But yeah, like you say, you know, getting that community actually talking into a camera or on a microphone or whatever, so people can actually hear the emotion and the, well, again, like absolute impact of what's been happening and what it's delivered within the community. So either how that's enhanced the community, or whether it's given opportunity, or whatever that is. You know, there's all those incredible opportunities to be had, I think. So I do think. Do you think there's barriers to people talking about that, or do you think it's just a case of
when you say people talking about
sorry, I say organisations using it as communications? Because I don't. There is some element of it to a point, I guess. There's much more, like you said, about the organisations talking about what they've been doing, about their activity, as opposed to the actual, perhaps, community feeding back their voice on it. Yeah,
so the way I'm viewing it, and edit it out if I'm incorrect, I believe you're looking to support, is the Believe Influencers concept.
Yeah.
Where the way we're envisaging it is, it's going to be warts and all.
Yeah, good.
There's going to be all the sexy, lovely PR branded, gorgeous stuff that you do, because otherwise, otherwise you can't stand out like you do. But we want the voice of the community to be heard, and we want the voice of the recipients of the activity that's going on to be heard, warts and all. So the Believe Influence concept is that we want to drive kids to, and this is where hopefully mentorship from people like yourself, who might want to become journalists, PR, marketing, comms type of people, to develop them at that age, and they're the ones going, because we know our competition, in terms of what kids want to do with their lives, is social media. Yeah. So we need to talk with social media, and who better to do that than them, not us?
Yeah, absolutely.
So they drive our content. So we want the Believe influencers to be working TikTok campaigns and Instagrams, and I didn't even know what they are or aren't using those. I'll stop there before I embarrass myself even further. As I said, last century was my rugby. So we want to develop that so that, you know, that's some way again of you creating your social value. Is that you're mentoring kids to be able to explore an opportunity to maybe come, you know, into those various job descriptions. Who knows what job descriptions there are in the future anyway.
Well, exactly.
But digital media is going to be a massive one of those. And who better than them to go and capture the stories? So they're the ones going out talking to, you know, whether it's a rugby activity, a music activity, just a talking, a games, a playing activity, whatever the activity is, food, you know, music. I've probably repeated myself a few times, but anyway, whatever it is that we are doing in the community where lift is created, go and have these kids to go out and to talk to the kids or the rest of the community and say, what do you think then? Well, it did this, and you know, and for them to relate. Now, because it's warts and all, it's not going to be linear. You know, there are going to be occasions where we're going to get some, you know, not great stuff coming out of it. But this is the journey. That's also
important to understand, though, isn't it? So if it's not worked as it was anticipated to work, then well, what's the reasons why, and what can we do next time to make sure it does work, or what do you need then to kind of manoeuvre to give the impact that we want or we're expecting it to have? You know. It's all a movable feast in the end, isn't it?
And then again, that's where we come to the fierce caring, fierce challenge mentality is we need to hear those voices. In aviation, we used to talk about it, and if you've got an environment where you're not hearing anything, it's not good. I need information coming to me. So psychological safety in my crew was vital. So you know, there was a phrase was, what's worse than bad news? There's no news. You need to hear stuff. So unless you're getting that feedback, you don't know how to make things better, or you don't know where the issues lie that we've got to go and pile resource or time at. Excuse me. So no, this is about creating that environment for us to be better. And a growth mindset to be infused. It's a cyclical thing. We're going to start off with a solution that we've designed with the community, but that's just where we begin. But anything's going to be better than where we are right now. And once we start breathing some oxygen into what is already some amazing work that's going there, but just in a joined up way to give it some life, you know, that's what I meant by it's not if, it's when. Because it can only be better.
But you're working with organisations now, aren't you, to kind of almost test piloting this system, this ecosystem that you're putting in. Is that right at the minute?
That's right. So it's starting off in the North Tees, the NTH, the North Tees Hartlepool Trust, the hospital trust, were, you know, before Liz and I had even started a business, they'd sort of loved the idea and backed us right from the get-go. So we've been playing catch-up in terms of an organisation. They're like, oh crikey, you've got to not just try and deliver this on the ground, but actually try and figure out who we are as a business and try and run a business, And, you know, I was flying aeroplanes and Liz was in the police until recently, so we didn't have a Scooby about any of this. Still don't a lot of it, you know.
We all learn every day.
Every day is a school day. So, but anyway, so they got behind us, and very quickly we brought a steering group. They able to assemble. Liz from a background from the police, brought Cleveland Police and the PCC. We managed to get Stockton and Hartlepool councils on board, and breaking news, Teesside Uni and the Tees Valley Combined Authority have just agreed to come on as well.
Amazing.
And I think when this goes out, I can say that officially.
Oh, so let's hope so. We're going to jump the gun.
Anyway. So I'll tell you when you can. But no, so it just, but only from a mindset of, you know, no one's, the only contracted body are the trust so far, because we are in pilot mode. But they've given us their most important commodity, which is their time and their validation and their credibility to say we want to back this. So when we can't thank them enough for that, and it's given us an ability to have the conversation with the voluntary sector to say, no, there's these people behind this. They want to go into their supply chains and direct it in your direction. And it's been able to create this movement for us. But, you know, I pat ourselves on the back, Liz and I, that it has created a movement because they've understood we've fiercely cared. The public sector got it. straight away that
Well,
we care about
they're
these.
delighted to hear about it, aren't they?
And
Because,
they
like
are.
you say, they're so under pressure. So.
They're so under pressure, and suddenly we're able to finance, not from their budget, but
No.
from their suppliers, a way of getting more value out of it. That can push some early intervention work with the community that they just can't do. And once we started talking to the community sector to sort of say this is what we're looking to do, and them shedding a few struggles along the way still are, with some people not quite getting that they just think we're there to take their funds, and fighting for their funds. So to impress them, no, we're here to bring not funds just funds, but loads of funds,
absolutely,
and time and energy and
That's
mentorship
quite interesting,
in a very strategic way in there. But and understandably, the ecosystem there is they're having to fight for everything they've got, and they're hand by mouth. So all of a sudden, a newcomer in saying, and not wanting to, trying our best not to be the knight in shining armor. We're not here to do your job. We're here to facilitate and help you do your job better, and because we know the pressures you're under. So, but anyway, that's been a journey. So, and still is, and still will be. But to helpfully understand, we're fiercely caring for their needs and being there for them, and having their voice projected out to the other sectors, the private. And starting that journey to go into there and understand we're there for them as well. We're not there to come, as I suppose we could do and say, you're doing it this way, whether you like it or not.
It's a blank check.
So
exactly.
Pounds, we're coming in and saying what's going to work for you, what's proportionate for you, what can help you with how you want to. What does responsible business mean to you?
Exactly.
And let us align that with what's possible here, and target and then point you in that direction in that way.
Or even, what's happening, this is what's happening in your community. How can you help take some of that responsibility and give that support and care and all that kind of, that side of it? Because again, I think a lot of organisations, unless they're really in tune with the communities, which they can't because they're so busy running themselves, they don't understand where they could actually be supportive. So I think that's really also a very important, it's a great thing, the fact that you and Liz have got Believe Solutions like in the middle, where you can be kind of like a vocal point, obviously, for the community, but also a listening ear for both sides as well. Yeah.
And I think that's an important point, because the other slight barrier we're meeting in terms of our competition, if you like, is existing social value teams and CSR teams within the private sector.
Yes, okay. So just tell me a little bit more about that then.
Because again, we're seen as competition.
Yeah.
We're seen as doing their job. And understandably.
So actually you mean employed positions within private?
Exactly.
Oh, okay, right, got you.
So sorry, I'm doing a great job.
Officer or whatever.
I'm doing a great job and they are doing amazing jobs.
Yes.
And they're putting their heart and soul into it, and but in the current ecosystem. And the current ecosystem is telling them they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
And they are.
Yeah,
and they are doing an amazing job for where the current ecosystem is.
Yeah.
What we're bringing in is a different way of doing it, which means we can help you and complement what you're doing and be there for you and be part of your team to help what you're doing and take what you're doing and take it into another level.
Just blast it, yeah, totally.
And that, I think that's an understandability of, we're here to collaborate with you and here to complement what you are, the excellent work you're doing, and help you. No one likes change.
No.
And especially...
I do quite like change, actually.
Okay.
But I am a bit odd.
No, but I think because you probably share the same mindset of, we need to change and evolve, because that's how we grow. Absolutely. And that's how we grow as people. And but it's understandable when you're working really, really hard and somebody's telling you you're doing a brilliant job, you're getting awards for it. Yeah. And we've got an ecosystem that tells them that you're creating social value to the tunes of millions. But dare I say it, there's a notional value attached to that value.
Yes, I know.
There's a notional element attached to that value.
You can't go out.
Milo's had enough.
Yeah, well,
I've bored you. Does he need to go out?
To go out.
No, but it's just that sense of just, again, fierce challenge is what people are used to. That's the current ecosystem, to go straight to challenge. Yeah. And about it's competition. It's about you versus me. where Believe are trying to, understandably, it's almost societal change in thinking about thinking, no, it's about collaboration and about how can we be there for you and understanding we're not here to be a you versus me or to try and take your role or your victories. We're here to help you create bigger victories for yourself and,
exactly.
and collaborate and be fiercely caring for you.
Yeah, and I love
and be
that. I
voice.
love the fact that, Believe is definitely about kind of like shining both sides in some ways. It's like shining a spotlight on what's happening, shining a spotlight on what needs to happen, shining a spotlight on what is happening, but let's make it better for you as well. So again, both sides. So let's really uplift that community and get that spirit and whatever's, those holes in the community that need plugging. But equally, let's help you make your organisations more responsible and meaningful and deliver, on all possible elements as well, because that gives, I think, purpose as well to people within that organisation. It understands that this is what, and there's so much research now about people wanting to work for really purposeful businesses and wanting to know the values behind it and all the personality behind them, and know that there's good causes going on with wherever they're working. So again, it's almost like a voice platform to be able to say, actually, this is who we are as an organisation. This is all the good stuff we do, and we're going to continue to do this because we know they can't just stop here. It's like it's still got to go on.
And but the point we were talking about earlier, the social washing bit, that like there's going to be more and more pressure on organisations to actually, that ain't good enough.
Yeah, it's true.
Because everyone from all corners is, and it's not fair on businesses, but it isn't. But that's the reality is. But what we're asking for is how can we step up? But what I suppose we're here to try and do is how can we help you to step up, but in a way that works for you.
And
that's
of course.
And thanks for shining the light on that, because that's what it's there. We're trying to be a broker for everybody in the system.
Yeah, that's a good term for it, actually, a broker. Yeah, I like that.
And because it'd be really easy for us to, say this example with social value. We've got some really big bodies that we're representing in the Tees Valley right now. Well, probably the biggest agencies. We're working on a few more where we will capture them soon. But because of the collective nature about how all of that together can do much more when it's talking from the same voice or representing the same cause.
Yeah.
But then we could go to the private sector and say, look, if you want to work in the Tees Valley, like we could be quite dictatorial.
Yeah.
Try and do that on a Friday.
Easy word, Friday night.
Friday. Dictatorial and say, oh, I don't give a monkey's what you wanted to do. This is, you're spending $1 million there. All your volunteering hours, you're doing it there.
Yeah.
And, I don't care that you're a builder. I want you to go and do some leadership support for that lot over there. It doesn't work. Well, it could work, but again, it wouldn't be optimal.
But how do you know, unless you ask them, is this something you're able to do?
Yeah, but most of the point, it's not going to be high performing.
Yes.
Again, to that point. So if we instead broker the conversation with them to say, look, these are the options of the stuff that will create massive impact here. Which ones do you want to play in?
Yeah.
And let us guide you to the ones that are suitable for you and you can gain most benefit from. And by the way, what we're trying to do is the big issue that a lot of companies are facing is skills gap.
Okay.
And down the road, where are they going to have these workers? Especially in Tees work, with the amount of investment that's coming in here. But unfortunately, what they don't see in Teesside or the Tees Valley are a workforce that are ready to meet the challenges of what's coming on in terms of job requirements, etc.
Okay.
And that is why that's why we're called Believe.
Yeah.
Because what we're here to do is generate aspirationally a sense of a community thinking that those jobs are for them, and actually aspiring and growing, and like embedding this sense of change is something that's healthy for you, that I want to go for that and aspirationally believe that I can.
Yeah.
That's where the name started from.
Is it really?
It's from how the community, how we can help a community lift and believe in itself.
Yeah.
And for individuals, and that's where Liz's background has come from, is from being a child who didn't have that belief. And an environment created it for her. A mentor created it for her. The Blackies of the world, the Ingers of the world, the Barney Schools of the world, create environments for which we can aspire and believe to be better and grow better and achieve amazing things as a result. We need to meet these skills back by trying to do the same in our communities here, so that it isn't just economic growth that's happening here. It's a sense of inclusive growth, that it's included the community in it. At the moment, we're at a risk, and dare I speak to some of the organisations out there, that you will be benefiting massively economically, but it won't be inclusive, because you are playing in the current ecosystem that's telling you it's a good job, but you and I know it won't turn into the kind of change that's required societally here. So we need to do things differently, and we need to do it together.
Yeah, I think the whole together thing is just so important, isn't it? Just like listening to each other, but also understanding what level of playing field we're all on, and how we can collaborate and who can bring what to the table. It's really important, isn't it?
Because, by the way, part of that inclusive and collaboration, sorry, are you going to know hearing things? Blah, blah. Part of the really important bit about collaboration is in the private sector. So no one's going to the private sector saying it's on your shoulders.
No, not at all.
It's what part can you play in the whole? And we're helping shape that by saying, for you, this is the part you can play, but you're playing your part alongside everyone else that's in the private sector that we're directing towards this. Okay, so how can we, again, through things like the Tees Valley Business Board, the Tees Valley Business Club, Network Not Work, I'm going to miss out names there, Federation of Small Businesses, Institute of Directors, Northeast Chamber of Commerce, whatever the group, the network you're a part of, or it's just you're a part of Northumbria Water coming down and doing a massive thing, and it's your supply chain group, how can you play your part? And it's just pointing them in the direction to have the most maximal impact.
I think one of the worst things at the moment when we sit from going back to kind of CSR or social impact, social value type of work is the fact that a lot of organisations, I think, feel it's upon them. So the private sector feel, oh crikey, we've got to do this, we've got to do volunteering, we've got to donate money, we've got to, I don't know, do whatever. And it's not a case of that, is it? It's why wouldn't you want to do that? But
well,
then,
it is.
but then I'm not that mindset.
But it isn't just you on your own.
Exactly.
And
it's not asking you as an isolated organisation to take that weight. It's asking for all of us, like you said at the very beginning, all of us to contribute in whatever way we can do. And
it being proportional. And being, working with that organisation to find out what's going to work for them, to do something that's going to work for the community. Tony,
it's been great. I think we could.
You're going to shut me up now, aren't you?
You know, we could talk for hours on this, but it's been really great to have you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me this afternoon. Would you just like to finish by telling everyone where you can find Believe Solutions, or contact yourself or Liz, however you'd like that to happen?
Okay, well, simply, you'll find us at believesolutions.co.uk. LinkedIn for Liz and myself, probably the best, easiest way to get on. We usually respond to things quite quickly. And follow us on Believe Solutions on there as well. But hopefully there'll be plenty of other channels for you to get. We like to work organically, and that's kind of how things have worked for us. There'll be some weird and wonderful ways for us to promote what we do, but really nothing beats word of mouth and just people knowing, just coming up and saying hi. Please come and say hi. Anytime.
Just to find out some more, because again, it's a very different movement, I think, to what people have been presented with before. So I really hope, I know it's going to be successful, because I think the world's ready for something like this. So you've got my backing completely. I absolutely love the whole proposition, and I think the more people can hear about it, the more people understand it, and understand this whole kind of like sharing and massive, like, what did you call it? I want to call it feisty care. No.
Fierce.
Fierce care.
It could be feisty as well, Joe.
And feisty
when we get to Liz in Cumbrian mode.
I know. I think maybe I got Liz in my brain.
Yeah, no. But she says it. She's
in the nicest possible way.
She does it in the most beautiful way. I love it. It's like.
So yeah, thank you again, Tony.
Yeah,
it's been
pleasure.
great to have you here,
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening and watching, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye for Milo. Woof.
He's gone.
He's gone.
You've been listening to the Responsible Marketing Podcast. You can contact me with any questions or comments by email at joe@jolonconsulting.com or find me on LinkedIn. All recordings of the podcast can be found on the usual podcast channels, as well as on YouTube if you prefer to watch rather than just listen. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe, which helps the podcast to be found by more people. And of course, feel free to share it on your socials, with your friends and your colleagues. That's it for now. So until next time, thanks for listening.